Welcome to the Midwest photo review of the all-new Godox AD400 flash unit. This is a really exciting new product from Godox that fits between their existing AD600 and AD200 models that a lot of you will probably be familiar with. In this review, we're going to talk about the light itself, some of the major differences and things that make it stand out from other Godox models, and also look at some images that we shot with it and how it really behaves in the real world in an actual shooting situation. So I want to start off the review just with my first impressions of the product and kind of everything that you get with it. The first thing to touch on would definitely be the case. Like the AD200 that sits under the AD400 in their lineup, it comes with this nice sort of semi-hard case right out of the box. You can see that it's got a foam insert that'll hold the light itself, your charger, the one battery that comes with the light, the flash tube which comes removed from the light when you open the box, and then the Godox Mount adapter for the Godox multi-mount. Also on the case there is this nice zippered pouch on the top that could fit other cables, or you could even move the charger up there, fit your transmitter in there, any spare batteries, things like that. So that is a really nice added value. I think if you travel a lot, this would definitely keep your light safe. And I felt really comfortable having the light in here as I brought it to and from location while I was shooting. It is a really, really nice added bonus. Moving on to the light itself, it's really small. I have my Nikon D800, which is a full frame Nikon camera body with the battery grip and the Tamron 45 millimeter lens on it. And you can see just sort of side by side, the AD400 is not that big for a light. Certainly not much larger than most lenses that people carry around with them from time to time. It's, I would say, comparable to a 70-200 in size. The light also feels a lot more dense than other lights from Godox have in the past. It is certainly a lot better built. The buttons have a much more tactile feel. They feel like they're attached a lot better and will stay put over time through heavy usage. They also added a really wonderful new feature that is the unlock button when you power the light on. So when you press the button, it asks you to twist the dial here to unlock it, and they basically have that on there so that you don't accidentally turn the light on, or the light doesn't turn itself on when it's in your camera bag and drain the battery or turn the modeling light on while you're traveling to and from location. That's a really cool extra feature that you only see usually in higher end lights. So that's really something I appreciate with this. I think, honestly, as far as first impressions go, I am very impressed with the light. It is small, it is, in my experience, durable, it feels really great in the hand. It really is, I think, a really wonderful light, and I think as far as finding the balance between size and performance, this really looks to be about the best that I've seen so far. The battery itself, which is always sort of a point of contention with people, is really small. You can see compared to the D800, the width difference, it's, I would say, half or maybe even close to a third of the size of the battery for the AD600 or some other comparable battery powered models. They claim about 390 full power shots on a one charge with this. So that's really a pretty efficient battery, and it's small and light enough that I think if you had to carry a couple, if you were a wedding or travel photographer, it's certainly not going to break your back. It looks really similar to various other speed ring mounts, though this is a brand new bayonet from Godox that allows for, like I said earlier, switching between different speed ring mounts, and they also have the ability to, you can mount modifiers directly to this if you so chose. Basically, what this is, like any other light that you're used to, a sort of speed ring mount, but it is designed to let you adapt over to other speed ring mounts from popular manufacturers. So if I open the box, it comes with the Godox Mount adapter already. So you can see the 3 different Bowens bayonets here. Aside from Bowens, you also have Profoto, Elinchrom, and Broncolor mounts available. So if you're switching over from another platform and don't want to replace all of your speed rings, which is a cost that can really add up, or maybe you already have an Elinchrom or Profoto Beauty Dish or some other modifier where the mount is not detachable, it's permanently built into the fixture, you can still adapt it over to the AD400. Like a lot of other Godox lights, the flash tube itself is in this glass dome, so you don't have to worry as much about touching it with your hands. It's not going to hurt anything. And then underneath you have the LED modeling light, which is a really cool feature to have, not having a bulb there. It's brighter, more efficient, better for the battery. I decided to take my light meter and do an actual test to see how much output we could really get out of this light. With the standard reflector at 3 feet, we got f32.8. At 6 feet, we got f22. And at 10 feet, we got f11.6. So that's almost f64, f22, and almost f16. That's a lot of output at ISO 100, even better, I forgot to mention. So if you are going to be shooting in a studio environment or just want the best performance from your sensor and want to use that low ISO, you've got tons of output. If you raise your ISO by a stop or two even, this gets even more ridiculous. The soft lighter was surprisingly bright in comparison. At 3 feet, I got f22. At 6 feet, I got f11.8, so almost f16. And at 10 feet, I got f8.6, so almost f11. So at 10 feet, you might have the light that far back for shooting in group. With the soft lighter would be a really good choice. Being able to still get an aperture like f8 or f11 means that you are going to get a nice good depth of field, and you could get several rows of people in focus. So I think really, I mean, that says a lot about this light. That's a really surprising amount of output out of just a unit this small. I did 2 different shoots with them. One was totally outside, the other was totally inside. For the first one outside, I did 2 different sort of angles. The first one was a little bit closer in, and I want to start off with the image that was just the natural light to show what the image looked like if I didn't use the flash at all. And you can see the settings there pop up on the image, and it's really not a bad photo, but there's not a lot of shape, and the exposure in the background and her face is very even. And so, you know, they could definitely be changed a little bit. We could do better, I think. So if I pull up the next photo, this is when we added the flash. This was the Godox AD400 in the Photech soft lighter. Our settings didn't change really too much, but you can see how much more shape is on her face, and how much more that sort of emphasizes the subject. Really the big takeaway with this is it doesn't take a lot to get this. It was the light, the stand, and the soft lighter, and then the transmitter on the camera, just those few extra pieces that I had to bring along to get that. And I was able to operate this totally on my own without bringing another person to help me with this. And it can really make a pretty big difference in your images. The second setup that I decided to do with the AD400 outside was basically to show off high-speed sync. With high-speed sync, you're able to break the camera's normal limit of about 1/200th or 1/250th and go all the way up to 1/8000th of a second with your shutter speed to create a little bit more drama, or just change the amount of ambient light that's affecting your photo. So in this first one, you can see I brought my shutter all the way up to 1/8000th of a second, and it really is a little too dark. The grass and the house and the sky behind her and the trees are all way too dark, and it's almost distracting. So I decided to bump the shutter down to 1/2000th of a second, and you can see now how much more even everything is. It looks a little bit more natural, I still wasn't really happy with the really deep shadows in the trees there, so I decided to go down even further to 1/500th, and I got this photo. And this is really where I was the most happy with it. You can see that the house behind her is not quite blown out, but the house and the sky are very bright. But everything looks pretty natural like it does to the human eye, and we've still got a really good exposure on her. For the second shoot that I did with the AD400s, I decided to go inside and do some studio stuff, and also some more kind of environmental portraits. So I just want to take a second to look at those and kind of break those down. The first image was also with the Photex soft lighter. You can see that we're at 5.6 at ISO 200, which is the base ISO of the D700 that I was shooting on. And just the one light with the Photex soft lighter is able to give us a really nice even light. You know, we've got good coverage. There's not a ton of fall off on her, so everything's nice and even and soft. We've got a really good catch light with that. This is all pretty standard stuff. The second image was really the same lighting. I just decided to pull back a little farther to illustrate how even it is. So with the AD400's power, we were able to back the light up far enough so that it's nice and even, so that, you know, her head and her legs have relatively the same amount of exposure, so we don't have a really extreme fall off or gradient or anything like that. Just makes it look a little bit nicer and a little bit more thought out. For the second setup that we did, this was kind of a mixture of ambient light and flash. And so these first two photos that I'm bringing up, these are without the flash, just the natural light to see what the light is normally. And you can see I had two different exposures. One was at f4 and 1/200th of a second. The other was at f6.3 and 1/80th. The light's not looking great. It's one really harsh on that one side of her face, but we have a really quick fall off and a really deep shadow. So there's not really a lot other than scooting her to the other end of the couch farther away from the light. It's always gonna look kind of iffy like that because we're not able to really control or shape the natural light that much. Although I did want to use that window light and kind of make that part of the photo. With the photo that we ended up with, I stuck to f4.5 and 1/160th. And let a lot of that window light in, but I used the flash to basically kind of augment that and sort of fake having a much nicer even light. The fourth setup that I did was another studio setup. This one was a little bit different. I used two lights for this. One as sort of the key light, and that was the Westcott 7-foot. And then the fill light, which is actually just behind me, as you can see in some of the behind the scenes videos, was the Photex soft lighter. What this kind of lets me do is fill in some shadows created by the key light without it looking like I've added much of a second light into the shot. Again, it just makes for a more even image. And part of why I wanted to do this is because of the backdrop that we used that had a slight color to it. I didn't want very much of an exposure gradient from one side to the other, so that second fill light helped us to even out the background as well as the exposure on our model. And the second image here, I just pulled back from that first shot. So this is basically the same setup. I think I did stop down to f9 with this. But again, you can see, you know, we're still getting really, really solid output, and even all the way from her head to her toes and the backdrop and even the floor in front of the backdrop is still really well lit because of, again, the size of the modifiers and how even everything is. And I was nowhere near full power for these images. So the AD400s, I mean, are really capable of doing a lot. This one was, again, more of kind of an environmental portrait with some of the furniture that was in the studio. The first image, there at f2 and 1/100th of a second, was just the natural light coming in to the window from camera left. It's not terrible, but you can see the shadows aren't great. She's really dark. We've got that really heavy highlight on her hair. It's not, you know, really, it's an okay image, but there's a lot that we could do to it. The second image here is just having added the AD400 with the Westcott 7-foot. So the same exposure settings, f2 at 1/100th of a second. Placing that really actually pretty similar to where the window was, just sort of back around so that we could get more shape on her face. You can see that we have a nice good ambient exposure and see a lot of the room. And again, like some of the previous images, the light really just looks like it's coming from that window. So we can just kind of cheat with that big soft source to kind of help include the location without it looking too overlit. The whole wireless system really is super functional. This is their kind of standard transmitter that's available for, I think, every camera system at this point. So whether you're a mirrorless shooter or someone that still prefers SLRs, this is available to you. So you can control all their lights off camera with this thing, or a lot of their speed lights also have the control unit built in. It's just a great feature that really adds a lot of versatility to the lights because the whole system is so inclusive and easy to use together. I think if you are someone that's going to use multiple lights frequently, whether they're multiple strobes or a mix of speed lights and strobes, I think Godox really is kind of the way to go. The AD600 does have some things like the ability to make take the flash tube on a cable separately to make it easier to boom and things like that. You can even combine two AD600s together to make one big 1200 watt light if you needed it for some reason. But if you're just going to be using the light as it is, doing one light setups or even two light setups, I think this makes a lot more sense just because of the size and portability, how much smaller the batteries are, and the fact that, you know, you still have the Bowens mount on it, which brings up the AD200. I think the AD200 is a really wonderful light. It is very small. It's pretty much the size of a speed light, but it does not give you any sort of direct built-in modifier mount. And it really is, it seems like it is the light that will do everything. I really don't think there is much that you couldn't do with one of these. I wouldn't hesitate to shoot groups with these, maybe one or two of them. But I think really in all reality, if you are either upgrading from speed lights and want more power without committing to a big light, or you're just looking to add stuff to your system or switch systems or whatever it is, I mean, this is it. I think this is the light to get. In all my experience with some of the pro photo lights, with the AD600, with the AD200, I think out of the Godox lineup, this is the way to go. I think especially if you're, you know, learning and new to it, but don't really want to sacrifice on what you can do with the light, the AD400 is pretty much perfect.